I'll give the call to the Honourable Member for Bass, Ms Finlay.
Thank you, Speaker. Notice of motion 120.
Thank you.
Notice of motion 120.
Thank you. Is the member requiring a vote?
Yes, please.
Thank you.
Speaker, this afternoon I rise to move the following motion, that the House agrees climate change is a significant national and global issue and Tasmania needs to develop new renewable energy to power Tasmania's industry, create jobs, support the electrification of the vehicle network and contribute to national efforts to reduce carbon emissions. That the House supports the construction of new wind farms at Robbins Island, Whaleback Ridge and in other areas of Tasmania, including offshore, as well as projects to produce e-fuels. That the House recognises Marinus Link at both stages of North West transmission development are essential infrastructure if Tasmania's major renewable energy projects are to proceed. And further, that the House support the Albanese Labor government's Rewiring the Nation policy and recognises its critical role in funding essential transmission projects like Marinus Link and the North West transmission development. That the House does not support any policy that would cut the funding for Marinus Link or the North West transmission development and in doing so cause the cancellation of tens of billions of dollars of renewable energy projects in Tasmania. Deputy Speaker, there is no guessing the position of Australian Labor, Tasmanian Labor, backing in Tasmania's renewable future. However, recently, reckless announcements from the Australian opposition, backed in by the local state Liberal government, cause for critical investments in Tasmania to be put at risk. For Mr Dutton to announce the withdrawal of support for Rewiring the Nation, to announce the withdrawal of the hydrogen production tax credits, to put at risk significant investments in Tasmania, which puts at risk the economic future of this state, puts at risk businesses, large and small, and families and communities by the reckless announcements that he has made. And our intention today is to ensure that it is on the record clearly where this parliament sits, where we, Tasmanian Labor, as the Tasmanian opposition sits, but most importantly, where the government sit on these critical issues. Extraordinarily, this morning, we heard the Premier say he admires Mr Dutton for his nuclear agenda. Now, we know that the nuclear agenda put forward by Mr Dutton puts at risk absolutely the renewable future for Tasmania. We know that in Tasmania, not only led by 11 years of inaction by this government, the amazing proud history and legacy of Tasmania's electrification of our hydro-industrialisation has been put at risk by the inability of this government to do anything. And when that's coupled by the reckless abandon of the federal opposition to cut the critical funding needed to actually secure the next 100 years of investment in renewable energy in Tasmania, we need to know where this government sits. Just recently, Mr Dutton announced that he would cut the hydrogen production tax credits. We know that in doing so puts at risk critical projects in Tasmania. Tabled in the Parliament just today, a letter from Able Energy demonstrating exactly the impacts that this sort of recklessness occurs. And for the benefit of the House and for those people listening and for the benefit of Tasmanian communities who have been frustratingly waiting on this government to be able to bring investment into Tasmania, I'm going to read this letter into the House because it's really important. From Bell Bay Powerfuels, Able Energy, today written to Leader of the Federal Opposition, Mr Dutton. Over the past 5 years, Able Energy has been working with the Tasmanian government and local communities to build Australia's first green methanol plant. Methanol will become the long-distance shipping fuel of the future, with increasing demand as the European Union and other governments and the international shipping industry seek to reduce carbon emissions. We are close to bringing it all together with final engineering designs. The proposed methanol plant would be the largest manufacturing investment in real terms in Tasmania in the past 50 years and a significant driver of economic development development $4 billion in northern Tasmania. It would employ 500 people in operations and 1,500 in construction. The project has attracted the strong interest of European and Japanese shipping companies who will pay remunerative prices under long-term contracts. Northern Tasmania has great advantages in this new manufacturing industry because of its hydroelectric power alongside other renewable energy and its abundance of biomass from local plantations. Our large plant will be followed by others using the region's natural renewables and timber resources. Beyond immediate employment, the project promises intergenerational benefits by fostering advanced manufacturing and creating a new generation of skilled trade and engineering jobs in northern Tasmania. The Bell Bay Power Fuels project represents a pivotal step towards establishing Australia as a leader in low-carbon liquid fuel production on a global scale, providing sovereign fuel manufacturing capability that is crucial for our national security and economic resilience. The economics of the project, first of a kind in Australia and advanced in the world, are strongly assisted by the Commonwealth's hydrogen production credits and other support for new industries. The Bell Bay Power Fuels project is set to receive from the hydrogen credit alone approximately $150 per tonne of green methanol, which is a critical factor to ensure a level playing field with competing projects in the United States, the European Union and elsewhere. Tasmania can outcompete all other places on a level playing field. I note your statement of intention to repeal the hydrogen credit and withdraw other support for new zero-carbon industries under current Commonwealth policy. The repeal of the hydrogen production tax offset and other support under established policies would jeopardise this transformative project, undermine our efforts to transition to a sustainable energy future and diminish our competitive edge in the global market. I am sure that you would not intend those negative consequences for northern Tasmania. I seek your assurance that any changes in policy will not apply to Bell Bay Power Fuels. Without that assurance, we'll have to pause work on the project at this critical time. Our work has had the strong support of the Liberal candidates in the local and adjacent electorates, the Tasmanian Government and local governments and communities. Off script, off the letter here, has been tested today and not so clear. Back to the letter. I urge you to commit to protecting the Bell Bay Power Fuels green methanol project from any policy changes that would prevent its successful implementation. This project is not just about economic growth. It is about securing a sustainable and prosperous future for Tasmania and Australia. Thank you for your attention to this critical matter. Now, extraordinarily, this letter came today on the back of announcements from Mr Dutton about ripping away the funding for the hydrogen production scheme. Now, we know that Australian Labor have worked so hard to ensure that they put the framework around supporting renewable investments not only in Tasmania but across the country, leading in that transition. And the only state that can lead this absolutely is Tasmania, when backed in by national and state governments who are in action and doing the right thing. The risk to Tasmania, the greatest risk to Tasmania, a Premier who backs in Mr Dutton's energy future, proud of admiring of Mr Dutton's nuclear future plans, puts at risk Tasmanians' investment and Tasmanian jobs. We know that the whole system of energy in Tasmania requires people to be investing and supporting those investors and those projects here that can continue to shape the renewable energy future for Tasmania for 100 years or more. We have significant wind farm projects, we have significant load projects like HIF, like Able, we have significant existing businesses that want to expand and employ more people that can't because they can't get access to the power they need to do that. We know that future electrification, the future support of the vehicle network will all require more renewable energies in Tasmania. But this government and the federal opposition will put that all at risk if they do not continue to be upfront with the Tasmanian community and honest about their lack of willingness to support those investments in Tasmania. Because what we've seen over the last 11 years here in Tasmania, a government that talks the talk but cannot deliver. It has taken so long to get projects just minutely progressed in their pathways towards approvals in this place. Whaleback Ridge on the west coast of Tasmania, years to get permission to enter an approvals process. Still now waiting excruciatingly for a conditional stage lease to continue their work. Robbins Island, years to go through their processes, and now still with uncertainty from the Minister right here, who who has not been able to solve any of the coastal challenges presented by that project. That sits squarely at the feet of this state minister who is clearly out of his depth, either out of his depth or not willing to progress the essential projects needed in Tasmania. We have Marinus Link, we have North West Transmission. This morning, repeatedly, the Premier and the Minister asked about critical infrastructure on North West Transmission, and in their responses, quiet on North West Transmission. We have a minister who just recently questioned and raised into the community an uncertainty about the government's commitment to North West Transmission. We already know, broken down into two pieces, misses the critical infrastructure that, if Whaleback and Robbins can actually get through the government's processes and be supported and start construction, have nowhere to plug in, just like a government that's built boats but nowhere to berth them. That is the story of this government, and that is the story of this government now being in parallel with an Australian opposition, with Mr Dutton seeking to undermine the beauty of the resources in Tasmania, the legacy of the resources in Tasmania of a renewable future, by admiring the Mr Dutton's nuclear plans for the future. And it's not just the government that undermine the potential for a renewable future in Tasmania, but extraordinarily the Greens, who claim to be all about climate futures and all about supporting the environment. The biggest risk to the environment is climate change. The biggest supporter for climate change in Tasmania is the onset of renewable projects. Yet at every turn, the Greens in Tasmania seek to undermine and not support critical renewable projects in Tasmania, whether it be Marinus Link, whether it be North West Transmission, whether it be the wind farms, whether it be other projects. It always blows my mind that the Greens who seek to purport that keep getting in the way of a renewable future in Tasmania. So what do we have here today? We have a state of Tasmania built on a legacy, communities built on an incredible effort to build this renewable future for Tasmania, and we have a government and the Greens that always get in the way of actually being able to achieve that. In our own community, we've had the letter tabled today from Able Energy. There have been a number of international entities attracted into Tasmania to seek to invest and to continue the great work that happens in Tasmania right now, that have been attracted here through prospectuses that promote that there is an abundance of water, of energy, and that you can be here. The only project remains standing in the Bell Bay district at the moment is Able Energy. The reputation of Tasmania, tarnished by this government by attracting in investment with terms that were not true, things that were not ready that they said would be, attracting in people who spent millions of dollars preparing themselves for a potential investment here, turned away because of the frustrations of this government. We've had Woodside, Origin, Fortescue, all gone out of Tasmania that could have provided future potential jobs and economic stimulation needed right now more than at any time, because this government has put Tasmania in an uncertain and debilitating financial position, and one of the ways to help bring Tasmania out of that is by stimulating economic growth. And when we've got Able Energy still standing and still committed to northern Tasmania and Tasmania as a whole, and then more roadblocks are put in the way by the Australian opposition and Mr Dutton, it is unreal that this government won't stand up and advocate. Our leader this morning called on the Premier to work with him to call on Mr Dutton to wind back his cut of the hydrogen tax credits. It is something that we could do together as Tasmanians to ensure this investment, but the Premier silent on that offer. The Premier silent on the commitments to North West Transmission, and a comment around how he would seek to fund North West Transmission if the Rewiring the Nation project is cut, another of the reckless cuts of Mr Dutton. The it's hard to say. The Rewiring the Nation fund offers deeply concessional funding for those projects, which actually reduces the cost of the project, therefore reduces the burden in the energy prices of everyday Tasmanians and businesses. But if that fund is cut and not available to the project, particularly around North West Transmission, then the prices will go up, the cost of the project will be greater, and the Tasmanian government are yet to say how they would then alternatively fund that. And what we know is that that would increase power prices for Tasmanians. There There are so many risks at the moment to Tasmanian individuals, in householders, small businesses, medium to large businesses and our major industrials being presented by both the Tasmanian government and the Australian opposition. There are so many risks at a difficult time economically for Tasmanians, where there are things that we can control here to support Tasmanians that this government seem unwilling or unable to do. We've just had extraordinarily in the last couple of weeks an energy minister locally who either is not across his portfolio or who is blatantly ignoring the facts in his portfolio to say that he is unaware of the pressures that his energy policy is putting on Tasmanian businesses. When you couple that incompetence from our local state energy minister and the challenges by the walking back of funding to critical renewable projects from the Australian opposition, Mr Dutton, then Tasmania is in a place that will be hurting because of that. The hundreds of jobs, the billions of dollars of investment, the opportunity for communities to find new ways of securing their futures. Renewable energy projects in Tasmania, it's not just onshore wind like Whaleback Ridge and Robbins Island, but it's also the offshore wind. We have a Tasmanian government here who talks about the benefits of offshore wind and the possibilities of that, but are yet to actually appropriately back in the money required to do the business case to ensure that we can secure the investments on offshore wind in Tasmania. Bell Bay is positioned to be one of the greatest ports in a network of ports to support offshore wind in Australia, not just for the Bass Strait zone, but for all of the zones in that greater Bass Strait area. But in order to do that, there is timing that needs to be met, and the business case needs to be completed in the next 6 to 12 months. This government, yes, have committed in the budget an amount of money that would see that work delivered, but over 3 years. And that's another example of this government not being able to do the work in a timely and urgent way to deliver the outcomes that actually would deliver the economic returns that this government sorely need to repair the broken budget and the broken financial position of the Tasmanian state. So we call today on the Tasmanian government, we call today on Mr Dutton to walk back your cuts, to walk back your comments around cutting, rewiring the nation, to walk back your cuts to the hydrogen tax credits, to continue to commit to the critical future of Tasmania around renewable energy. We call on the Greens today to, as the TCCI recently said, get real on renewables. You can't actually expect a change to the environment without actually being real about the things that can bring that. If you don't back in renewable energy projects in Tasmania, what are the alternatives? If not wind, then what? We have great solar projects and other projects in Tasmania, but the reality is right now, and it's critical that this government continue to be honest with the Tasmanian community, there is not enough power generated in Tasmania to cover off the existing operations of businesses in Tasmania, that current businesses that want to expand, that want to employ more people in Tasmania, current businesses that are looking to invest in Tasmania, that want to relocate here. People come here and can't get the support that they need, not only in energy but also in water. It was only recently that Able Energy, needing water to go to Bell Bay, the Tasmanian farmers in the Tamar Irrigation District wanting water, the Parliament doing the work, but this government still not being able to deliver that. Marinus is critical for Tasmania's future because it unlocks the investment in billions of dollars of projects earmarked for Tasmania. Northwest Transmission done properly is critical for Tasmania's future. The tranche required from Burnie to Hampshire, where the major projects would plug into, is critical for the future of Tasmania. Projects like HIF, like Able, are critical for the future jobs and investment and economic activity that this community needs. Tasmanian Labor, the history, the legacy of hydroelectrification in Tasmania, a proud history that we understand over 100 years has been instrumental in the support of the Tasmanian economy. We know that for the next 100 years that can be brought forward if this government would do the work to approve the projects are needed, and to do the work to stand up to their colleagues in the Australian opposition, Mr Dutton, to stand up against his agenda for nuclear, to stand up against his cuts of rewiring the nation, to stand up against his cuts to the hydrogen production tax credits, and do what is right for Tasmania, do what is right for Tasmanians, for our families, for our communities and our businesses.
I'll take the